I'm John with Orange Mod Works, and in this video we're going to talk about shell repair as it relates to the plunger body in the Retaliator and Recon MK2. This could be for the stock plunger body if you had the pegs on the side shear off, or more commonly if you have a Recon MK2 and the little braces up in the front have broken off. So this is a repair, not a preventative measure, because there isn't really enough room, especially in the Recon MK2, to fit padding or otherwise reinforce this area. In the Retaliator, you have some extra recess right here where you can pack that with epoxy putty or something. But in the Recon MK2, it's just flat up in the front, mostly flat. You have like 2 millimeters of space. And just like the Retaliator, the bolt sled comes all the way back and contacts this area. So there really isn't much space to put in padding or anything. Not padding, but epoxy reinforcement. You can put padding behind here to try and prevent this area from breaking off, but you may run into priming issues if you're using the expanded plunger body that we have in the hybrid kit. So for shell repair, this is only for once this area has broken out, or if you have dremeled this out and want to do a reinforcement. We have these two pieces up on the workshop now. They are 3D printed SLA parts, and for the Recon MK2 they slide into these rails and hook on in the back of the shell here near the trigger catch. And there's a left side and a right side, and they go in like so. You can just press them in. You don't need to use glue or anything, but you can if you want. So the deal with these is they rebuild the front here that braces against the plunger body. For if you're using our plunger body with this piece, it'll match perfectly with that right there. And it holds it in two ways. First, it gives a 90-degree shoulder for the plunger body to rest against. This is more relevant with our piece, and well, actually the stock one as well has this lip. The other way is that this will protrude just a tiny bit further out than these two rails, so it's going to squeeze your plunger body on both sides while the shell is closed. And what you'll get is when the shell, well, provided your magazine catch is lined up properly, when the shell is closed, there'll be a tiny bit of a gap up here. This is a little exaggerated because I've added hot glue to one side, but when you put the backpack cap on, it'll just squeeze together. The screws will go in, and it will hold that plunger body and offer a lot more shock resistance. And really, as long as you're not dry firing, you shouldn't have any problems, but you know, we all get to the end of a magazine, and over time those dry fires accumulate, and the white plastic of these Recon MK2s and some of the white Retaliators, they just seem to be much weaker than the old blue plastic, and the Recon MK2s are just less beefy up in the front here. So far we actually haven't broken a Retaliator at all. This is the shell that we used for all of our testing, and really the only damage is a little bit of shaved plastic right here, and on this half of the shell there's a stress mark. Let me see if I can get that to focus. You may be able to see it, but there's a stress mark right there, and that's all the damage we've ever seen in a Retaliator. But the Recon MK2s fail at a much higher rate. Let's see, this half of the shell broke out. On this one, this half of this shell, I had to Dremel it out. So when I mentioned that glue earlier, I was experimenting with the tension of this protrusion to hold the plunger body in place. And if you want your shell to grip the sides of this very firmly, you can add a tiny bit of hot glue in here and then press this down and then wipe off the excess. That'll raise this up a little. Now, hot glue will not stick to this SLA material, so you're really relying on the back here, hooking against the shell to hold it in place. If you use epoxy or some other glue, it'll probably hold, but I wouldn't recommend that because this is designed to be removed. So that is the SLA fix that we will have up in the workshop. And keep in mind, this is a repair, this is not a preventative measure. You cannot install these with an intact shell. This is only for after you've either removed this right here or it's broken out. That being said, if you want to try and prevent this from happening, you can add a little bit of padding up in here. Let me show you on the Retaliator shell because it's easier to see. You can try and add padding behind here or replace this little rubber piece with something a little more substantial. Just be careful, because if this plunger body gets pushed back too far, it's going to press against the trigger catch and your blaster may not prime and you may not be able to fire once you get it to prime. With a stock plunger tube, that isn't that big of a deal because it's shorter, so you have more clearance. Now, if you want to build up a reinforcement in the front, I would recommend using epoxy putty. Now, we're all familiar with the plumber's putty. It's used for a lot of things in the modding community, but it dries hard, very hard. They also make a plastic version of epoxy putty, which even when it's dry, it's a little bit malleable. Well, not malleable, but it gives a little, so it absorbs impact a lot better. Not saying that this stuff will crack, but if you're in an impact environment, the plastic epoxy putty is better. And what you can do is fill this area and build up a blob right here. And then while it's still wet, take your bolt sled and press it back to make sure you're getting that full range of that full travel. And then take your bolt sled out because you don't want to glue it in place. But it will mush that reinforcement into place, making sure there's enough clearance for the bolt sled. Because in both of these blasters, the bolt sled does touch this surface up here, so there really isn't a lot of space. So other than that, if you don't want to purchase these repair bits, you can make your own. A few customers have sent in their fixes where they've taken L-shaped pieces of metal, or one guy sent in cut down, those cheap Allen wrenches you get from IKEA furniture and stuff. Just cut down the short end of the Allen key, lay that in there, and epoxy it into place. So really any L-shaped bit that can come up and grab this lip here, either on the hybrid cylinder or the stock one, anything that can grab this lip and you can put into these rails on either side of the shell will completely fix this issue and reinforce it. And like I said, this is only a repair. There isn't much you can do preventatively besides adding some padding. But if you've broken this out, you can repair your blaster with either these inlays. Actually, that shows up a lot better on camera. So with either these inlays or with homemade ones. And there's a version for the Retaliator and the Recon Mark II. The Recon Mark II has these circular peg-shaped things here, so that can hook on. The Retaliator is flat, so we have a version that is flat for the Retaliator. And if you choose to buy these, when you receive them, they will look like this with the support material and everything. These are not really kit parts. This is a 3D printed solution for modders who wish to reinforce or repair their blasters. Alright, and that's it. Thanks for watching.